Greetings, fellow duelists, and welcome to Budget Builds, the show where I look at some of the cheapest, most free-to-play archetypes currently available on Master Duel. I'm Hardleg Joe, if you didn't know, and today we're looking at normal rare DD, or as I call it, Nerd. A build that takes one of Yu-Gi-Oh's most expensive and complicated archetypes and reworks it into a simple, low-rarity advantage deck that just about anyone can pilot. Now, unlike the other decks in this series, Nerd is not designed to go on the standard competitive ladder. Instead, it was built specifically for the NR Rarity format that currently has its own little festival going on in Master Duel. As such, this thing does not have a very high power level, because it doesn't need to. It exists in a format without Ash Blossom, without Access Code, a format where cards like Moon Mirror Shield and Planet Pathfinder are considered too powerful to be at 3. So yeah, with that in mind, here is the deck. I'll explain how it works in a minute, but first, let's run over everything in here real quick for those of you who just want to copy the list and then figure it out on your own. All the monsters are DDs, so I'll just skip that part of the name and say that we've got 3 Savant Kepler, 3 Necro Slime, 3 Night Howl, 3 Baphomet, 3 Savant Copernicus, 3 Orthos, 3 Arc, 3 Evil, and 3 Savant Newton. For spells, we have 3 Dark Contract with the Swamp King, 3 Book of Moon, 3 Forbidden Chalice, and our only traps are 3 Dark Contract with the Witch, and 1 Dark Contract with Errors. Our extra deck contains 3 DDD Oracle King D'Arc, 2 DDD Super Doom King Purple Armageddon, and 1 each of Chaos King Archfiend, Scrap Archfiend, DDD Gust King Alexander, DDD Super Doom King Bright Armageddon, DDD Stone King Darius, number 76 Harmonizer Gradiel, Track Black, Cross Sheep, Codebreaker Virus Swordsman, and Triple Burst Dragon. So now that you know what we're playing, let's talk about how to actually play it. Standard DDs are a complicated combo deck that builds big boards full of massive monsters. An RDD is more what I would call an advantage deck, or even a grind deck. Your goal is not to devastate your opponent with huge explosive plays, but simply to out-resource them over time with repeated destruction and low-investment boss monsters. You accomplish this mostly by using our Dark Contract cards. These are continuous spell traps with effects that you can use every single turn. Contract with the Witch lets you send a DD or Dark Contract from your hand to the graveyard in order to destroy a card on the field. Contract with the Swamp King, meanwhile, lets you fusion summon DDs by using cards in your hand, field, or graveyard. Which, I mean, there's your loop right there. Every turn, you're going to be popping your opponent's cards with which, by discarding monsters, they can just be used as fusion material from your graveyard. Our main boss monster is 1 Oracle King D'Arc. This can be made with any 2 DD monsters, so it doesn't matter what you draw or what you're discarding, as long as you get any 2 monsters in this deck of mostly monsters, you can summon a free 2800 beater, which is mostly what this is. D'Arc does have an effect, but it's more useful for protecting yourself from yourself than from your opponent. You see, these powerful Dark Contract cards do have a downside. They all state that if they're face up during your standby phase, you take 1000 burn damage. D'Arc's effect says, if you would take burn damage, you heal that much instead. Which, I mean, it's nice and all, it keeps you from dying to your own effects, who wouldn't want to do that? But doesn't really put the fear of Ra into your opponent's soul, you know? Which is perfectly fine in this version of the deck. The advantage of D'Arc here is not that it's a particularly fearsome monster, but that you can summon one out every single turn. And best of all, if they get rid of this thing by destroying it or sending it to the graveyard, you can just use it as fusion material for an even bigger boss monster. Purple Armageddon requires 2 DDD monsters to make, which, short side note, most of the main deck monsters in this archetype have 2 Ds in their name, while the extra deck monsters all have 3 Ds. If an effect says you need a DDD, then you have to use a name with 3 Ds, but if it just says DD, then you can use anything, including the 3 Ds, as long as it has at least 2 Ds in the name, which I know is kind of confusing, but that's just how Yu-Gi-Oh! Works. Anyway, my point is, if you get 2 D'Arcs out, or like a D'Arc and one of your other extra deck monsters, maybe this guy, then you can banish them from the field or graveyard in order to make this. Purple Armageddon is a 3,500 attack behemoth that can destroy 1 monster per turn and burn for half its attack. Again, not the most powerful boss monster, but a pretty good value considering you can just make it for free using your destroyed cards in the graveyard. Now, what is the most powerful boss monster, at least in this format, is its Synchro counterpart, Bright Armageddon. This thing also has 3,500 attack, but its primary effect is protection. It prevents your opponent from targeting any of your monsters with card effects. Which means your board is immune to the best removal in the format. A Book of Moon, Fogblade, Ring of Destruction, Dino-Mishus, Lost Wind, Jelly Cannon, Compulse, Malevolent Sin, Vortex Dragon, Mithrilium, all of them target, which means all of them are useless in the face of the brightest Armageddon. Unless your opponent has exactly Torrential Tribute, or I guess a Kaiju, or Fissure, this thing is invincible, the closest that NR format has to a Towers. And the best thing is, summoning Bright Arma is super simple. It's a level 10 Synchro that requires a DD tuner and a DDD non-tuner. D'Arc is a level 7, and Night Howl is a level 3 DD tuner, which means if you can get both of them out on the field at the same time, bada bingo, bada bango, you've essentially won the game. And doing that is not too difficult, because Night Howl's effect is, when this card is normal summoned, you can target 1 DD in your graveyard and special summon it. Now that monster's attack and defense becomes 0. If it leaves the field, you take 1,000 turn damage, and you're locked into Fiend-type monsters for the rest of the turn. But you'll notice that there's no level restriction on that effect. Which means if you've got a D'Arc in the graveyard, all you gotta do is normal summon Night Howl, bring it back, and then immediately Synchro summon into your unstoppable boss monster. Alternatively, if it's the first turn and you've got the right openers, you could just fusion summon D'Arc with the stuff in your hand, and then just normal summon, or even pendulum summon Night Howl. That's actually what a lot of the other cards in this deck are here for. All these pendulum monsters do have pretty neat effects, like Orthos' Spell Trap removal, for instance, Copernicus' Foolish Burial's a DD when it's normal summoned, and both Arc and Evil have these, anti-pendulum effects that can help you against metal foes. But for the most part, I just picked them because they have great scales that'll occasionally allow you to pendulum summon a Night Howl out alongside a D'Arc and win on the first turn. And of course, it doesn't hurt that these are all DD monsters too, which, again, even if you don't pendulum summon, you can discard them with which to pop cards and then use them as fusion material in the graveyard. And really, that's the entire core of the deck. 2 Dark Contracts, one that destroys, one that fuses, a bunch of monsters to fuse into, an unstoppable boss monster, and a tuner that lets you make it with your fusion monsters. I mean, I'll go over the other cards in here real quick just for the sake of thoroughness, but keep in mind that everything else in here is essentially just a tech card. You can replace most of the DDs with any other monsters in the archetype and get similar results. In fact, there's still a ton left in normal and rare format to experiment with, some of which even have a lot of potential. Now, the only exception to this, the only thing you should play at 3, regardless of your build, is Savant Kepler. It has an absolutely awful pendulum effect, but when it's normal summoned, you can search any Dark Contract card, which are, the entire core of the deck. This thing is also why we play the one of Dark Contract with Errors. because it is searchable if you've already got your other 2 dark contracts. Its effect is, once per turn, if you control a DD monster, you can negate all other trap cards on the field for the rest of the turn, even if this card leaves the field. Depending on what you're up against, or how the meta shapes up, this may actually be something you want to play more copies of, because it stops the few remaining trap cards that can actually get rid of Bright Armageddon. Pretty nice. But anyway, leading off our brigade of optional DDs is Necro Slime. This thing can banish itself and another monster from the graveyard in order to fusion summon a DDD, which gives you an alternate route into making D'Arc if you don't have access to Swamp King for one reason or another. Baphomet is just a level 4 non-tuner with decent stats. It can modulate the levels of other DDs, which can be potentially useful if you want to make something like Stone King Darius, but most of the time you're just bringing it back with Night Howl in order to make one of your level 7 synchros. There's a surprising amount of level 7 Fiend-type synchros in this format. None of them are particularly good, though. In fact, Scrap Archfiend is just a 2700 beater with no effect. Like the fusions, though, the strength of playing these comes from the fact that anytime you can normal summon Night Howl, you can get a free big beater on the board. Moving back to the main deck, Orthos is spell trap removal, as I said before. Once per turn, while in the Pendulum Zone, it can pop a DD or dark contract you control, and one other spell trap on the field. It is also a level 4 tuner, which you'd think would be good, but I've yet to find anything useful you can do with it in this format. Usually you have to make it level 3 with Baphomet in order to really make your plays go through. Arc on the field is a 2k defense wall with a bad floating effect. Arc in the Pendulum Zone is a 1 scale that can pop itself to destroy a pendulum summoned monster your opponent controls. Very situational, but occasionally useful against metal foes or any pendulum deck for that matter. Same thing with Evil, though I consider it to be slightly better. On the field, it's a 2k attacker that can only attack if there's another DD on the field. It also has a quick effect negate that can only be used on pendulum summoned monsters and only during your opponent's main phase. It's got a high scale at 8, and if you play it in the scale, it has the effect that once, only once, when your opponent pendulum summons, you can negate the effects of the monster summoned and make it so they can't attack. As for Book and Chalice, they are just completely generic tech cards that you can replace with literally anything in the game. I only picked these because they were quick play spells that wouldn't possibly interfere with our archetypal trap stun. Again though, replace them with whatever. Tragodia, MST, the choice is yours! Anyway, all that really leaves is the remaining extra deck cards, which are mostly just like some generic links that I thought would be cool. As I often say in these budget build videos, you can replace these with anything. I mean that. You don't ask me in the comments what they are. It doesn't matter what they are, you can replace them with anything. If you really want to know, you know what you can do? You can search for rare and normal links and read all of them. There's like 10 in this game, and none of them have complicated effects. I have given you an entire deck on the platter, on a silver platter. It's a gold platter even. A platinum platter? Perhaps. But the point is, I've given you all these cards. I've explained them in detail. The least you could do for me, the least, is just read 1 or 2 cards. Just learn a little bit. Do a little bit of learning on your own. I would thoroughly appreciate it. Anyway, we've also got this level 7. She's pretty cool. It's like a rank 7. You can make it if you get 2 D'Arcs on the field, and they don't get removed. It's like this rainbow fairy thing with like a keyboard for a sword. I'm not sure why you would summon it. It has effects. I'm not gonna read them. I'm not your dad. You can read. I just went on a big rant about how you can read. Learn to do it for me. I would appreciate it. I would be proud of you if you learn to read. But I digress! This is normally the time of the show where I get some spicy replays in here, showing off what this deck can do in action and how it actually plays. I don't have any this time. I'm recording this before the festival, and you can't really save replays from friend duels, at least not in a very easy to view way. I kind of hope they change that in the future. I'm also not going to give recommendations for SRs and URs to put in this deck like I normally do, because it feels kind of pointless in this instance. I'll bring that back when I do the regular budget builds, but for now, I just wanted to focus on some shorter episodes where you can just get a fun deck list out with an explanation they can all enjoy in the upcoming event. Or I guess it's probably out by the time this video comes out. Or maybe it's over if you're watching this like a year from now. YouTube is a strange place where all content lives immortally. But I'm going to digress again. If you like this style of video, I do have another build I'm working on. Let me know if you want to see it by hitting that like button down there. If this video can get 4,000 likes in the first week, then I'll bust out some Danger Mech Bears for y'all. I know you want to see the Danger Mech Bears. Don't pretend like you don't. Otherwise, I think I'm just going to call it here for now. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Be sure to subscribe if you did. Be sure to check out my Patreon if you really liked the video. You can get on my patrons only Discord. I have a pretty cool community. Regardless of what you do, could you have a nice day for me? Could you do that for me, sport? Huh? Just have a nice day. Anyway, until next time, good luck and have fun.